Hey, this is Alpha. What is computer use and why should million-dollar brands pay attention to it? Computer use is a feature that Anthropic has released as part of their API. This is a new way for large language models to control computers. If we look at a recent post that was made on X by Combinator, Gary talks about the idea that we are now living in the age of AI agents. And part of this shift is thanks to Anthropic's new Claude computer use. Now, before this, of course, developers have always had access to the ability to create agents, give those agents certain skills by teaching them how to use tools. That includes how to write code, that includes how to read files. But thanks to Anthropic, there's now a single API that you can use to be able to do this so that you don't have to build the foundation or the infrastructure yourself. So if you're a company and you want to better understand what Gary and I are talking about, definitely watch this video. He talks for about 8 minutes on the vision that Y Combinator has as an accelerator for the agentic AI space, and especially with the use of computer use, pun intended. The aspect that I think is critical to focus on is what it enables. Now, of course, Anthropic has documentation for this, and you can read through what they describe. Just a few things that I'll bring to your attention. Claude 3.5 Sonnet is the model that they recommend to be used for this specific API endpoint. The reason for that is because Claude 3.5 Sonnet is a very good model for coding, and it is a very good model for using tools. So the two go hand to hand. Tool use is nothing more than function calls, and function calls are written in code. So the things that I'll bring to your attention here that are important to understand if you are a brand considering this, one is it's a beta release. So they emphasize that the API will change, they emphasize that the tools will get better. And beyond that, the documentation itself is a great starting point for anyone who's interested to use it right away. And I'll give you another implementation that will be quite nice for anyone who's interested to use computer use. The documentation talks about how you can leverage their API as done so through messages endpoint. You can also do so through Python, meaning there's an Anthropic SDK that's available through TypeScript. Same thing here. We're seeing a TypeScript SDK available on NPM, regardless of how you chat, rather how you want to use this API endpoint, whether it's doing through HTTP calls or it's going through programmatically through Python or TypeScript. There's ways for you to do so right away. So it's as simple as roughly 20 lines of code, and then that gives an agent the ability to use a person's computer or user's computer. If we look at kind of the how-to, I'll also break down what is happening behind the scenes, but short of reading this, and definitely encourage you to read this yourself, there's quite a bit here, is to consider that this specific application of computer use is just an abstraction on what is essentially a request for an agent to perform a function using the tool. So here's a great explanation, or flowchart rather, that I think will solidify this. So as the user, meaning the human agent, makes a request, they ask the agent, the AI agent, to use a specific tool to accomplish a task. So for example, read a file on the computer. The API request pulls back a list of available tools. So in this case, Anthropic is releasing 3 sets or tool sets. One is Bash, meaning the terminal. Second is text editor, and third is computer. And these are distinct, but they are related. So Bash is the ability to run something locally on your command. For example, list files within a specific folder through a shell command. Access packages, meaning install them, upgrade them. and know the state of that application as it's running, meaning progress updates. And then beyond that, the text editor is a way for an agent to understand any text that it's dealing with, including opening, editing, and replacing documents. That includes text files and markdown files. And of course, we have the ability to control the keyboard and mouse, as well as take screenshots of what a user's screen looks like. So if we reflect back on essentially what we have is an agent that understands the available tools first and parses or considers the user's prompt in the response. So in here, the Claude, meaning a large language model like Sonnet 3.5, is evaluating the tool. It is coming back if there is no tool use necessary. For example, if the human says, or the agent, human agent says, what time is it? The tool is not needed. And so it will come back with saying, based on my understanding, here's the time. But as soon as it uses one of the 4 or 3 tool sets I've mentioned, it now starts to figure out, okay, what does it need to execute that tool? So it needs input, it needs the function itself, and of course it needs to return the response or the result. This is done in a loop, meaning this will iterate as long as the agent is satisfied with the outcome, as well as the user is satisfied with the response. And of course, you have upon task completion, you have the user knowing that response is finished, and so the agent comes back with a final response. Now I want to briefly jump into the other ways that this is possible. Of course, API requests through Anthropic is one way. There's another way, and that is through Open Interpreter. Shout out to their team for this amazing open source project. Highly recommend you look into this. So this project got started last year. So they've been around, and they are at a point where before Anthropic, they were doing computer use themselves. They were essentially describing or building what I was describing before, which is building their own tools, building their own functions, empowering agents to do that type of computer control. Now, with the latest, or with one of the latest releases as of October the 23rd, version 0.4.0, Open Interpreter shifted to using Anthropic's computer tools or computer use as part of their new operating system mode. So if you want to use Open Interpreter with the flag -- OS, you can immediately use the computer use as a tool. And all this does is it creates very convenient wrappers for interacting with the computer use API. So with this API, you simply can use right away. And the Open Interpreter is a shell that you install once you've sort of set it up on your computer and you select the appropriate model. Behind the scenes, the Open Interpreter team is using Sonnet 3.5 as well, and but you can also choose which large language model provider to use when you're interacting with the model. So, for example, you can have OpenAI GPT-4o model give you responses, and then you can have Sonnet 3.5 to control a computer. So you do have flexibility with Open Interpreter, which is quite nice. So to run, as I mentioned, it's interpreter -- OS. That's the only condition to be able to use computer use with this project. Of course, you're not limited to that. There's many other projects that are open source that simply create wrappers on top of computer use. So that means you can get started very quickly if you wanted to test it and if you wanted to build this out yourself. The last piece I'll mention here, which is also important, and that is OpenAI is rumored to release something similar. And now keep in mind that this rumor dropped on November the 13th, and today is December the 6th. So this is something that may or may not be true, but nonetheless, they have a project codenamed Operator, which will essentially do the equivalent of what Anthropic is doing already with computer use. So if you are in this space and you're wondering how you can use this for your brand, well, there are at least 3 ways to make this work. One is if you just use the computer use API or the open interpreter, you can already empower agents to control computer. This is useful for circumstance when you have a salesperson or a marketer or a developer who are already using a computer, but they want assistance through these agentic workflows. So this is a great way to go about that. And then the third, sort of most important reason is that, as sort of predicted by Y Combinator, this will evolve how we work. This will evolve how brands are run. This will evolve how workflows are executed. In this workflow, an agent is controlling a computer by observing what the user sees. But of course, the agent is not limited to that. It's possible also to run these agentic workflows in a headless mode, in such that the computer is not using your computer, or the agent is not using your computer, but the agent is using either a headless browser or running in the cloud. So do keep that in mind. There are ways to overcome limitation of having agents only look at your screen. Beyond that, if you have any questions about what I've described, whether it's about the Anthropic's computer use, or it's about what are the applications of this for a brand, feel free to DM me or leave a comment below. If you want to see more videos like this, I will be posting more content so that you are more informed. I look forward to connecting with you next time. Until next time.